So funny, every time I tell people from America I'm from Canada, especially on stage, immediately, how's it going there,
You want a war? Or do you want to just give me a war?
There's a new NBA champion, and it's a team from Toronto, Canada. Oh!
This is the Prosciutto Masala podcast.
Welcome everybody to episode 8, Prosciutto Masala. It's been a while. I apologize. Things have been a bit crazy, and you know how life gets. So anyways, we're back now. I have a good friend on today with us, Emmanuel Osahon, friend and trader. Welcome, Manny.
Thank you, Rob. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast. I am excited, and happy holidays.
Yeah, you too, man. You too. There's like probably 5 listeners to this thing, so we're hoping to grow this podcast so that we get a bit more traction. But man, I'm glad you could be a part of it. And we're glad we could finally do this.
Awesome.
Sick,
Well,
sick.
it takes you gotta build it from the ground up, right?
For sure. Well, that's a good kind of segue, I think, into tell a little bit about, I guess, first like your experience and a little bit of your career lineage, how you kind of started in, if correct me if I'm wrong, personal training, then you kind of got into training. So I think or trading, excuse me. I think that's kind of interesting for people to hear.
Yeah. Like I mean, my story is sometimes I like to say it's nothing special, but I did. And I'm one of the people that like to go after what they like, what my heart feels, what my heart feels. And, I come from Nigeria where, there's a lot of poverty and there's a lot of, you don't exactly have a means to get to the life or have the experiences that you want. So I came here when I was like 14, and, I think living in a place like that, it kind of like instilled a lot of like, desire to do a little bit more. And I saw like, coming to Canada as a huge opportunity. So I came here, essentially as an immigrant. And, from like 15, started like working different jobs. And I think my first job was at No Frills or whatever. And then, moved out when I was 18 for school. And like I did like police foundations. And that was kind of like the start. When I finished that, I didn't exactly want to continue like my education with like college, because like the one thing I always say is, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, the fish will always live their life believing that they are, like stupid.
Inferior. Yeah, well
So,
said.
for
That's a
me,
good saying. Yeah.
so for me, I know I am not the most academically gifted person, but that's and for a long time I saw it as a disadvantage, but that's because I didn't know, my other capabilities. So after school, I was paying for my college and all living on my own at like 18, 19. And I just didn't want to continue like, going down a path that I just didn't feel was right for me. So fortunately enough, I met a dude, when I was at like bouncing at a nightclub. And he's like, yeah, dude, like, and we talked a few times, seen him come in. And he's like, yeah, I trade currencies. We started talking one day, and he's like, yeah, I could show you how to trade, if it's something that you're interested in. And it was so exciting because at that point in time, I had taken a year off from school because, I was going to go into criminal justice and see what was next for me out there. But I also knew I didn't want to do that. So taking a year off was kind of like giving myself, the opportunity to explore and see, what I can do. And when the opportunity came, the guy told me, I was like, I kind of felt it in my heart that like, okay, this is worth the try. This was before it blew up on social media. A lot of people knew, about what crypto was or what Forex trading was. Like at that time, you didn't look at your Instagram and saw like Forex traders,
All the Lambos and all the people.
all the Lambos and all of those things. So I'd say I came from an era just before that. And, the guy, funny enough, the guy told me that like I was going home that night, and he texted me. He's like, dude, if you're interested, like come by my place in the morning. and he
Mm-hmm.
came and he picked me up at like 6 in the morning. I just finished like a late night shift at like 3 a.m. and picked me up, went over to his house, and she showed me his whole setup. It looked like Chinese, when I was looking at the screen, the charts
Yeah,
and
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
But I was just excited. I was just excited to learn something different, and it was an opportunity for me to make something of myself. That's how I took it, and that was kind of how I got started into it. And I started off, and like the journey with like beginner's luck, which is always how a lot of people start into it. Like you make like $1,000, first $1,000 on the trade, as a
Mm-hmm.
beginner, and in the Alchemist they call that the omens, like good omen. The reason why
Okay.
the it happens is because the universe wants you to realize your dream or your goal. So you start out, like good, but the journey to greatness, wasn't all that great,
Mm-hmm.
because you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna have pitfalls. So I've been doing it now for like 7 years. I quit my job uh, at like when I was like 2009 to
Mm-hmm.
do it full time, and like I've never really like been employed by anyone like since,
Good for
like
you, man.
just been like been doing that, and it's provided me uh with a lifestyle that I'm grateful for. Things, like there's always things that you can always work on and things that you're always working to improve, but
Uh-huh.
yes, that's it. So on a day-to-day, trading, and I am also the founder of Live Free Effects, which is a online platform where people, if you're coming into the market, the currency market, you're looking to learn. We have beginner courses which we're actually giving for free right now.
Nice.
Beginner course that will kind of get you started, and then we have other advanced courses, technical course that will teach you the basics of just like like trading, as well as like if you're a little more advanced, some advanced stuff as well, which is some of the things that I use on a day to day when I interact with the market. One of the or more, at least for me, it's not a most expensive course at all, but it is the psychology course. And I think that when you're trading, in my years as trading, going to 8 years now, the psychological component is perhaps one of the most important aspect of trading, and that's what our brand is all about. That's what I'm all about, because that was one of the biggest pitfalls for me in my journey.
Yeah, I want to
So
talk to you about that in a sec because I think it's super fascinating. I think a lot of people, like myself included, like a dabble in like, just investing in basic index funds or just putting in kind of safe things and just buying a stock and holding on it. But I think there's a whole other side of it, especially if like for you, somebody that does it full time, that you need to master the psychology of it. Because we were talking on site, I know last time how about revenge trading, and I want to get your kind of
mm,
input on that and explain that because
mhm,
I think it's so fascinating because you know that I think we all do that even in regular life. Like whether it's like, okay, we, we have a bad dinner on Christmas, we have lots of junk food and lots of carbs or whatever. And then we go try to punish ourselves even more in the gym the next day. And sometimes that's even worse because then you end up, killing yourself in the gym. Then you don't want to go back to
mm.
the gym. And it's kind of about being slow and steady. So I think that seems to me like what kind of psychological trading is kind of about. But what I wanted to ask you first is just going back to like some of the trials and tribulations you probably had going full time. Because I know for me, I like the first couple of years for me in business was tough, right? And I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
people on social media that's like, oh, you know what? I started my own business. I'm hustling, I'm grinding. They're showing pictures next to cars and fancy nightlife, and I don't think not enough people talk about the reality of the situation when you're starting your own hustle. It's not all Lambos and Rolexes. You know what I mean? It's not even that now for me. So I think
Mm.
I'm curious to know your kind of journey. Like I imagine the first probably little while was a little bit scary. I know it was for me. So I'm curious, was it something that you kind of jumped in full steam and just kind of put everything on the table? You kind of dabbled a little bit in trading while you had your full-time gig, or I'm curious to hear a bit about your kind of lineage.
Um, so that's a very great question, Rob. Thank you for that. The To answer that question, it's something I said before. A lot of people want greatness, and they want to see greatness in your craft, they want to see greatness in your business, but the road to greatness is not that great. Otherwise there wouldn't be
Hmm.
trials and tribulations, right? So when you start something, it's not always that good. Like maybe the first initial start, you might get like beginner's luck, which I mentioned. But when I first started, it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. So even with me, with my brand, I'm very aware of the message that I put out there when it comes to trading, because I know it's a craft, and any craft requires a certain level of mastery.
Hmm.
You can't, you're not gonna, I'm not gonna come into your line of business, Rob, and say, you know what, I have 100,000. I don't have, the necessary skills that you've developed over the last couple of years. The clientele that you have, the relationships that you've built, and say, I'm going to put $100,000 into a contracting business, and boom, let's
Hmm.
go do that without any prior knowledge or any relationship formed.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, when you take a look at the market, whether it's crypto, stock market, the currency market, that's what a lot of people do.
Hmm.
And the reason why that is because of like YouTube, social media, make it look like it's easy. But when I first started, um, there wasn't a whole lot of people on Instagram who I looked up to. Maybe there was like one or two, and it just for like motivational purposes. But for my journey in particular, it was brutal, because I had my job, like my part-time job, or like I have full-time jobs that I was, working. I was doing security and doing like bouncing at night. I had a decent amount of money coming in, but while I was learning the craft of trading, I wasn't making a whole lot of money, because
Hmm.
it's like that's, you're paying your due. You're paying the price for what it takes. So when I talk to a lot of people now who are coming into they want to be a trader, it's, you have to give yourself a grace period. You
Hmm.
got to give yourself a grace period. Mind you, for me, I was very determined to make it as a trader, like, and it kind of helped me um, build a lot of discipline, and a lot of resilience, because it was something I actually wanted. I
Hmm.
didn't just look at it as like a means to, make money and whatnot. Like, it's okay to do it for money. And, I
Hmm.
do it for money, because if you're not doing it for money, what's the freaking point?
Of course,
But
we
there
got to
was,
survive.
you got to survive,
Yeah.
right? So like but there was some aspect of passion. There was probably a lot of passion, because I remember when I first started trading at the time, my lady, her and I, we just met. Well, we didn't just meet, but we were starting to get serious. And she was like, "Oh, it's either like you spend a lot of time, like you work a 12-hour shift, you got to go to the club, and when you come back between those like two jobs, you're on
Hmm.
the charts.
Yeah.
What time are you spending with me?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was living in a $500 apartment at the time, like one bedroom shared with like four other people in the house. So
Yeah.
it wasn't as comfortable living as now. But the irony of that was like I kind of like just told her, I'm like, hey, listen, like it's either this, like, or nothing. Like, you're not going to make me choose between a goal of mine or, like you,
Yeah.
because it's
Otherwise,
like,
there's resentment. Then if you don't feel like you're
of
following your
course,
passion and your goals in life, there's going to be resentment later. And probably it's a tough conversation to have, but it's probably a tougher one if
to not
you
have.
exactly, absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah, so and quickly, she got the hint that like, hey, listen, it's not gonna be, me or this, or it's like this is something that contributes to my life, and when I am happy, I can give more, to you. So yeah, like the journey wasn't easy. I struggled for 3 years. I would save up money and have a good run, and then like sometimes either it would like I'd make a couple grand, and then just like like lose it. And that
Hmm.
was the most devastating period where it's like you're putting in a lot of work, but you're not necessarily seeing the results that you've put in, and all the like times that you spend. And so it gets frustrating. But what I started to do during that time period that changed my life for probably forever was, because it was such a tough process and it was so tough mentally, I started to unknowingly develop myself, my resilience, my skills, outside of trading, by listening to personal development. I started listening to speakers like Les Brown. You shoot for the moon. If you miss, you will be among the stars. Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, guys like read books, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor
Victor
Frankl,
Frankel, good
and
book. Yeah.
just a great book, and
Hmm.
started diving really into like the whole concept of personal development, because the battle, I didn't want to, like, the battle with the markets, it was too brutal, like, like I was it was painful, like that was the thing, like taking those losses with hard earned money was very painful.
Hmm.
And what I started to do was just like, okay, focus on, personal development, meditation, all of these things. And before I knew it, it started to have a positive impact in my life and in my performance, because I had a better day-to-day routine. Right. And that's the one thing with trading is, beyond it being a craft, if you do anything to, like, I mean, almost the highest level that you can possibly do it, there will
Hmm.
always be some changes that it'll have on you. Like there was a part, I don't know if you've read The Alchemist, but
Oh yeah,
he
great
was
book as
saying
well.
that certain alchemists would lock themselves in the laboratory to figure out how to turn metal into gold. And what they realized is, with being there and trying to turn metal into gold, is that certain parts of themselves, like, faded away, and they became, like, they became better. They achieved, like, with like your masterwork.
Hmm.
And I think that's with anything with the craft. So for me, it was tough. I did it the hard way, but I never really gave up. With each loss I took, I figured out a way to come back, and I kept going until probably like 3 years into my trading career, where I was like, okay, you know what? I don't like working for people anymore. I've
Hmm.
been getting some pretty decent results in terms of like trading. My performance had been going up, and it gave me a little bit more confidence to say, okay, let me step out of like the 9 to 5. Let's take a step out of this and see, what I can do. And at the time, I just had my daughter. Like,
Hmm.
she's 3 years old now. At the time, it was very, very scary. It's like, how you gonna quit your job, your security,
For
when you
sure.
have another mouth to feed now. So
Hmm.
it was almost like seen, for like, to some people, like, as a reckless behavior. But I think that's the one thing a lot of people face in life is, the older you get, the more responsibility you get, and it becomes harder to listen to your heart and
For
listen to
sure.
the voice, inside of
Yeah.
you, that is telling you, what to do, like how to, like, to how to make yourself happy by living the life that you really want to live, not the life that society is pressuring you to live. So,
Yeah.
I
And I
took that step. Yeah,
sorry to interrupt. I was gonna say, I think a lot of, like, back to what I was saying about, like, what's portrayed on social media about business and about, doing your own thing. I think, like, again, it's all, people focus too much, I think, on the ups and don't talk enough about the struggles, like, of starting the business. And for me, I went through a similar
sure.
thing where I was like, honestly, probably for the first couple years, I'm like, shit, I'm like, should I keep doing this? Should I not do this? I was kind of in between when I left my job at the newspaper to, like,
Mm,
where I was kind of, dabbling in website development. I was selling websites to old clients, and then kind of starting
nice.
the handyman rental stuff. And then, I had a few conversations with myself where I'm like, shit, should I really be doing this? But for me, at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? I like, even if I'm making, I said to myself, I go, what's the worst that can happen? Even if I'm making $20,000 a year. I'm doing it on my own
Mm,
terms. I'm doing it for
mm,
myself. I get to make my own
mhm,
schedule. And it's not for
mm,
everybody, but I think the biggest thing for me is if you really feel in your heart, if you want to, if you're supposed to be doing what you're doing, you keep pushing, you're going to
mhm,
get to a point where it's like, you know what, the first 2, 3 years, that hard work pays off. And then I find just like the business just kind of explodes. I don't know if that was similar for you, but for me, it was like, okay, the first 3 years, kind of nothing happening. I felt making a little bit of money here and there, living paycheck to paycheck, where I'm like, shit, the mortgage is due. Am I going to have enough money to pay it? And then all of a sudden, like, it just kind of boom takes off. And it's like the
mm,
culmination of, I think, like a bunch of things. It's hard to pinpoint, but I think for me, it was like, people referring me to other people, my Google ranking growing, doing more advertising, word of mouth, all that kind of stuff. And then it kind of just takes off. And for me, it was like so motivating when you're finally like, okay, you know what, this is working. I know for me, like one of my very first sales that I got, like somebody's like, oh man, somebody's gonna pay me $500 to do
mm.
put up a couple pictures for them. This is great. So I don't know if it was a similar thing for you where you had a kind of a like an aha pivotal moment where like, you know what, I can do this and this is kind of working.
For sure. Yeah, like absolutely, I did. I think the I'll give an analogy later, but um, I'll say now I don't know if you're familiar with the story of the Chinese bamboo tree.
I'm not, no.
Okay, so the Chinese bamboo tree obviously is a Chinese bamboo tree, so it's found in China. I'm sure maybe you might have it in certain places here.
Hmm.
But the whole concept of it is, you plant the bamboo and you have to water it for, I believe, what is it? It's you have to water it for
Kind
like
of be consistent.
years.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to be consistent with it. I want to give like the specifics, either like 5 years or something,
Okay.
right? Or like 3 years. So it's not just a short period of time. You have to water it for an extended period, like a long time. But what happened after, I believe, either the fifth year, um, and it doesn't grow at all. So you're going out every day watering this bamboo. Your neighbor is
Hmm.
probably looking at you like, hey, is this guy crazy? This bamboo hasn't grown at all in an inch. The people around you are gonna be like, why are you doing it? Like, just stop,
Hmm.
right? And on the fifth year, it grows 90 feet tall in a
Wow.
span of like three days or like 3 days or like 3 weeks or so. Either way,
Hmm.
short period of time to grow that kind of height. And
Yeah.
the question is, did it take 5 years or
1 week or
or
whatever.
like a couple weeks
Yeah, yeah.
to grow? Right? And the answer is 5 years, because all
Mhm.
the efforts that you've been putting into it, has kind of like just exploded. And that's kind of what I always remember that story in my journey, because funny enough, when I was working security, as I started to get into personal development, I remember I put in I took a piece of paper and I wrote down in my wallet, and I kind of kept it with me as I would do my patrols and all that stuff. And the paper was like, I'm a successful full-time trader, and by like I think July of 2019. So I'd written this like maybe like 2 years prior to
Mhm.
that. And in September, I had my daughter, and at that point, I had already been thinking of like, man, I need to quit. I need to start working for myself, but I need capital. So I put like, took like money that like I had around and like saved a lot of money like that year. And, I'm like, okay, you know what? I have money saved for my living, my family living for at least a couple of months,
Mhm.
and I have capital that I'm going to be putting in the marketplace. And that is kind of like when you take a jump at something that you are passionate about, that's something that you feel connected to. Like, you take that leap, your wings might not open initially, but at some point in time, like, they will open and you start flying, but you have to jump first. So
Mhm.
that was just kind of what I did. I took the leap of faith, and as I literally made the decision to take that leap of faith and was going to be doing it, I felt like at peace, with
Mm-hmm.
myself. And that's one of the ways where I know right now, if I'm struggling with maybe making a decision, like even in business or anything, it's like, how do I feel with this decision? And to me, it doesn't matter whether it's the right or wrong decision. If it feels, if it's something that like I feel like, okay, this right now with what I know, it feels right. It feels
Mm-hmm.
like the right thing to do. I'll make the decision. If it turns out it's not the right thing to do, that's okay. You deal with the consequences. But that decision felt, just bliss. And a couple like weeks later, I was talking to a friend about it, and this is what I was gonna do. And he was a stock trader at the time, and he was more liquid than I was,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so he was also much much older than I was as
Mm-hmm.
well. And he's like, yeah, man, that's a good thing. How about, why don't we like kind of like team up and see what we can do. Like let's get some work.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do some stuff if you're serious about it. And prior to that, I'd given him some like tips on like or some like trades where he had like made some like substantial like amounts of money because he was very liquid. But I
Yeah.
did it like nonchalantly just because it's just like, yeah, just do this, buy here. Actually, I ended up I placed a trade, for him at the time, and I didn't think nothing of it because I didn't know if he was actually doing it with like real money or not. I just like
Gotcha.
he asked and I just showed him. I told him, boom. And next thing I know, the guy's like, "Hey, listen, it's like we're gonna be, like going with like 250 like thousand." And I was like, "What?" What do you mean, like in terms of like capital? Like it's like I was like it's like yeah, like I believe in your skills. I believe in what you're doing, and hey, let's take a jump. And
That's awesome.
yeah, so literally, that was kind of in the works, and I wasn't sure how well that would happen. So either way, I just quit my job, went to Peru, clear my head, and was preparing myself for when I come back to really just like dive into the craft of trading and all of that stuff. So,
Let's
which
go,
was the
man.
plan. And when I came back, like the everything came through. I had more money than I had, initially planned for, because I took that leap of faith, and someone saw the passion, that I had in my eyes, and that was it. Like I was literally making that year it was like November, and I
Mm-hmm.
closed the year with more money than I had made from both my jobs,
That's
like
amazing.
that entire year on like on like a trade. It was ridiculous. It was actually ridiculous.
It's
So
empowering,
yeah.
right? When you try, like I know for me, probably similar, even though we're a little bit different industries, it's I think similar mindsets. And that's why for me, I love talking to other people that have their own thing going, whether it's even just a side hustle for time full-time thing, because I
Yeah,
think it's so hard enough as small business owners or self-employed people to kind of make it on your own. And there's a lot of big
absolutely.
businesses that sometimes we got to compete against. And I think I
Hmm.
love just shooting the shit and talking and brainstorming with other people, like-minded people that have their own thing going, because it's tough to do it alone, right? So there's so much, even what you're saying now, strategies and I think mindsets that people can apply to regardless of what business they're in, right? And I think for me, just hearing you talk, one of the main things for me that made me want to take the jump, because it is scary, right? Like for me to kind of just leave, I kind of was in a position where I lost my job and then I kind of
Mm,
was forced to figure it out. I probably, if I'm being realistic with myself, I probably wouldn't have left my stable job in advertising if I hadn't have
mm,
been let go, because like you said, it's tough
mm,
when you got a steady income. And at the time I had no kids. I still have no kids, but I didn't have any really major responsibilities. We had a house that my mother and I bought that we had to kind of like pay for the mortgage, but I was pretty. I there wasn't too much risk, right?
mm,
But I think for me, I've always thought about there's a couple big things. Whenever I'm like scared to do something that I really want to do, there's a couple
mm,
things that I remember from a couple different books, and one is from Tim Ferriss, where he essentially talks about um, looking back when you're on your deathbed, and I know a lot of people think about this, but really putting yourself in the mental state of your own self in the future when you're 90 years old, say, in a hospital bed, and you maybe have a month or two to live. Like, are you going to regret doing what you want to do, or are you going to regret not doing it? And most of the time, I think if people ask themselves that, they're going to regret not doing that, right? And I think that's just one of the biggest pains to have in life. I know, talking to my mother, even she was a librarian. She graduated and retired a few years ago now, and she always talks about she had a fun at her job, but she always regrets not kind of going and pursuing. She always wanted to pursue a career in like broadcast journalism. But she didn't, because she was scared, because she got discouraged, because she's like, oh, people, you need a certain look and a certain voice. But she always tells me as I get older, like, that's one of her biggest regrets, not just trying and not just swinging for the fences and trying. I think that as young people, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? This goes into like the second thing that I was kind of telling myself is like, people have Tim Ferriss talks in his book, and if you read it, called The 4 Hour Work Week. It's an older book.
No, I haven't read it
A
yet.
really good book. I think you'd like it. It was like big, like maybe like 7-8 years ago, but there's a lot of good principles on just kind of running a business. And one of them is he talks about, if you're getting started, instead of doing goal setting, where a lot of people set goals from themselves, doing what's called fear setting. And I found for me that was really useful. And fear setting is basically writing out your worst fears in relation to the business. So saying, okay, if I start this business, what's the and you break it down in a few topics. One is, what's the worst that could happen, and what's most likely to happen. So I could be living on the street, I could be dead broke, I can go into debt, whatever it is. And then, what's likely to happen if I do it? He's like, am I really gonna live on the street? Like, I'm lucky enough that I'm a second generation Canadian. My parents came here, my grandparents, my parents were born here, my grandparents came. If worst case scenario, I tried the business, it didn't work out, I could always go live at home with my mom, or I could always go live with my grandparents, or I could live with my father. I got some avenues. So I'm not going to be like, it's not like we're living like, in a third world country where I got to worry about literally like food on my plate. I would have food on my plate. I'd have a place to live. And so it's not that bad. And when you go through that, like for me, I actually wrote it down, took an hour or two, wrote it down, and went through those fears. I'm like, you know what? Like, it's really not that bad. So what am I scared of starting? And I think if a lot of people do that, whether they're trying to start a business part-time or they want to jump into it full time, I think especially as Canadians, like, we live in, like, I think one of the best countries in the world. You have people from all over. Like if we went back 300-400 years ago, man, it's very unlikely that even me and you would even met each other, because our ancestors are from different countries, right? And I think that's so cool about Canada, is that you got people from all different parts of the world that come together trying to make it better for their family and their life. And when you come down to it, like, really, like, it's not that scary once you get in. It's obviously scary at first, but when you get into it and you kind of start something, whether it's, like I said, a side hustle, do something full time, and you just keep doing it. For me, it's like one of the best feelings in the world to kind of just, like you said, that bamboo tree story where you're watering for years and years. And you're like, shit, is anything happening? And then finally you see this tree sprout up. And I think a big part of it, and probably similar to like the trading psychology, is like just being persistent. And if you feel like you are meant to be doing what you meant to be doing, just like keep with it,
Absolutely. Yeah, that, like, you nailed it. Everything that you're saying right now, it hits home, because it's working. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. Like, the rewards are beautiful. The rewards are amazing, but like, I think the rewards is what makes a lot of people attracted to the whole concept of being a trader, working for yourself, starting a business, being a business owner. But like, the work that goes behind it, you're gonna need grit. You're gonna need determination, for sure. And in regards to the 4 hour week that you said, or like the book, in regards to like the fear, writing out your fears rather than goal setting, that's actually an approach that I took, because when I wanted to, I got to a point where, um, in my journey, I'm now full time trading, and making the money, or like some of the monies that like so some of the trades that I had dreamt of. I had some of the trades journaled, years before, like, oh, I'd like to make $20,000 on a trade,
Mm-hmm.
$30,000 on a trade. And this is like a period between like a day, 2 days, or 3 days or so. You're making like
Mm-hmm.
$30,000. You're making your yearly salary in a month. And I got to that point, and it felt amazing. It felt amazing, but because I had also been in the struggle, in the grind for so many years, the I was kind of like asking myself, "Hey, is this it? Is this it?" And a large part of the time, like Fridays done trading, you live that trading lifestyle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which, at the time for me, I was maybe like what, like 20, 24, 25. Go to the club, let's go to the club. Let's pop bottles. Let's spend $1,000. Let's spend 2 grand. Let's go to the finest restaurants,
Mm-hmm.
hang out with and it quickly became like repetitive and very much unfulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to notice the passion is like, is this what I worked for all
Mm-hmm.
these years? Because it didn't feel as sweet as I wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe those are like other personal reasons, but I think for me, service has always been an important part of how I live my life. A lot of my friends, not to take pride in it or anything, they do come, to me for advice or like anything like they need. And a lot of people I spend time with, they are older than me. So it should be reverse, but
Mm-hmm.
like it's not. And it's just the nature of like for me, I like to help other people. So when I looked at my business and I looked at trading, it's like, what value am I providing for society, for the people around me, when it's literally just me and my bank account every single day?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the fight, and you get to a certain point when you're in survival mode, these are things that are not going to matter to you. If you're currently in a place of like, you have a lot of debt, you have, a lot of problems that money can solve. These are not things that anyone in that position, myself included, is not going to consider,
Mm-hmm.
right? But once you get to a point where you surpass that survival mode, you have more than you need, right? And more than, like whoever else you're responsible for needs, you start to have these thoughts of like, hey, like, it's like, what value are you providing? And you start moving differently, which is why I decided that I'm going to set up, like a live free effects, because trading, as much as I love it, it just, it wasn't, it need, like, you need to still find something that taps into,
Almost like something bigger than
into
yourself, right? Something that's not just
something bigger,
you. Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Something bigger than yourself. And I'm not gonna say I have found it. I'm not gonna say that, but I am one step closer, with my brand Live Free Effects, to help other traders, to help educate other traders, who are coming into the market, with the pitfalls, help them start out, and just not make the same mistakes, because the stupidest thing you can do in life is think you can make all the mistakes yourself. Right. And that's one of the things that I
Mm-hmm.
learned very quickly, that made me just become like a super soaker for knowledge, because it's like, if you're going to get to anywhere, you need to learn from other people's mistake, because you're not going to make all of them, right? And
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. So yeah, that's really it. But writing out your fears is one of those things that allows you to take big steps. Because when I wanted to start the brand, I was scared. I felt
Mm-hmm.
like I wasn't good enough. And it was crazy because, you know, I had made more money on trades than some of the guys who had, a massive following. And if you look at my YouTube channel right now, we're still growing, still don't have a whole lot of crazy, following. But, in terms of experience, in terms of, like things that I was doing, I considered myself to be beyond, some of the guys on social media.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, I wasn't putting myself out there, because I was just like, well, I don't care. I'll just make my money and that's it, until the desire to do more kind of like hit. And it's, you're gonna be afraid that you're not worth it, you're not good enough, you and it's like, even though that's not true. So
Hmm.
writing out the fears is a great strategy. And I remember I used that to like, okay, what's the worst possible thing that, I can like that can happen? And you write them down. And I looked at it, and till this day, I don't think any of them happened.
Hmm.
Till this day, with getting the website and the business, like, is our website or platform, the content we put out has been more than I even thought was possible. That's the
Hmm.
funny thing. It's like I wasn't even afraid of not being good enough. It's like the way things happen, and right now what we're working on, it looks better than anything I could have possibly imagined at the time. So never, allow your fear to stop you from doing what you want to do, because at the end of the day, 90% of the things we worry about don't end up happening.
Yeah, and it's never going to be perfect too. I realized the first time I used to think like, I got to make something perfect. I got to make my website perfect. I got to make the marketing perfect. I got to have everything in a row before you start. But I realized, I heard it from a couple different places, but one of the places that it kind of stuck out for me, another really good book. I listened to the audiobook is Arnold Schwarzenegger has a biography actually called Total Recall. He kind of named it after the movie. But he basically just
Mm,
recalls his life, right? Really good book. And he basically talks about how the mindset that he had in bodybuilding taught him to have discipline and a good work ethic when it came to being an actor. And then he applied that same discipline and work ethic when it became to politics, and just how he developed a very successful career in a variety of different avenues because of the same discipline. And one of
mhm,
the things he says, he talks about analysis paralysis, and he goes, he actually, a lot of people don't know this, but he was actually a millionaire before he even got into acting, because he took the money
mm,
that he made from bodybuilding and he invested that in early on in multi-family properties in California with, I think,
mhm,
not Lou Ferrigno, with Franco Colombo. He was another like bodybuilder, right? And so they put their money
mm,
together, put in these complexes, and rented them out. And then over the course of his career, those properties paid for themselves 10 times over. But he goes, he was at a
mm,
party. He talks about in the book where he goes, his real estate agent, really successful real estate agent that was talking to him. And he goes, oh, he goes, you bought this property, but weren't you worried at the time that the market was going to crash and this could happen, and this could go wrong, that could go wrong. And he's like, you know what? He's like, I never thought about that, but you're absolutely right. But he goes, you know what? If I would have probably known that, I probably wouldn't take action. So sometimes it's like it's better not to know everything, and sometimes you got to
mm,
you do as much preparation as you can. You don't want to jump into something blindly, of course, but sometimes if you have what's this he calls analysis paralysis, where you hyper analyze a situation, then you don't take any action. So I think sometimes some action is better than no action at all. And the nice thing about
mm,
the business, I find this for me, I don't know if you find it the same with you, but it's kind of like success with a business is kind of like shooting an arrow, but you
mm,
can move the arrow as it's in the air. You can kind of like,
mm,
okay, I'm doing a little bit too much of this. I need a bit more of this. You can kind of tweak it, and there's no like. It's the nice thing about trying something is that if you do something it doesn't work, just try something else. But I think so many
try something
people,
else.
you know what I mean, try to make things perfect. But I was reading an article a while ago where the CEO of I think it was Bumble, she talks about like we released Bumble and had tons of issues, but if we were trying to make it a perfect app to from the very beginning when we released it, we would have been like years behind and we would have never even gotten any market share. So sometimes you go
Mm,
and you figure it out along the way, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So I think that's a key thing too to for people that want to do their own thing, is that like it's not going to be perfect, but just make peace with that. You do the best you can. You don't want to obviously, just do shitty work. You want to have quality work and you want to do the best you can, but make peace with the fact that, you know what, it's maybe going to be 80% or 90% perfect. You're never going to have 100% perfection, right?
absolutely. Definitely one of the things I agree with. For sure, definitely.
It's interesting. So tell about, so say for people, for you, Manny, that want to get started in trading, what would you be your advice to them that they like, what's a good starting point? Like, is there stuff to read, stuff to learn?
Yeah. The one thing I always say is that, find out the reason why you want to get into trading. Like that's the main thing, right? It's like if you want to be a trader, is it like, is it something that you want because you want to live that lifestyle? You want to live, is the lifestyle more attractive than the craft?
Hmm.
Because that's something that you want to keep in mind, because the journey is going to be very it's going to test you. It's going to test you. So, what I always say is that before you get into it, understand that trading is a craft. Disregard whatever you see on social media, because that's not the reality of anything. Like, it's not, social media is absolutely not the reality for anything. Any businesses, these guys who are showing you Lambos, Richard Mill, yeah, Rolexes, and all this stuff. It's like, if you're looking at them from a trader perspective, they do lose, right? So understand that it's not going to be easy. Um, but if you are starting out and you're passionate, this is something that you want to do. There are a lot of places that you can go online, like to get started there. Like, research online before you start spending money on, like, buying courses. I
Yeah.
know this is counterproductive to even my business because it's, you want to promote, but like, that's the truth. That's how I feel. I feel like, there are a lot of resources you can learn on YouTube. You can learn on like, there's if you're looking to get into like trade, like the industry, like forex, or what do you call it, currency trading, baby peps .com is a good beginners platform. If you go on my website, Live Free FX, like that's LIVE free.com, sorry, livefreefx.com.
Okay,
You
cool.
will find a free beginners like guide that will kind of help you kind of jet start your overall trading experiences. So
We'll put the link in the show
these are,
notes too for everybody listening of your site. So I'll get
yeah,
that from you after, man. We'll put that in the show notes.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So yeah, definitely. Like, there's a lot of places that you can start, but the most important aspect is the same way you do anything. Understand that in order for you to get the rewards that you want to get to, you need to develop a certain level of mastery, because it is a craft, and it is a very important craft. The other thing I would say is, when you start out, pay attention to the psychological aspect, how you feel, how you're managing your emotions on a day to day, because that's really what trading is all about. I would say 90% of traders lose in the market, not because they're not technically adequate to trade,
They don't
but
follow the
more
plan.
so, they don't follow the plan,
Yeah, yeah.
because when money is in line, they're like, the trading game is goes like trading um goes against your primitive like your biological makeup. And that's the reason why trading is important, to develop the psychological aspect, because when there is money on the line, you can't think straight. It's like you can't think straight. So easily, one of the things that's important is your amygdala. So when a lot of people are faced with the pressure of making decisions when they have money on the line, a part of our brain, which is a very primitive part of our brain, it's called the amygdala. The amygdala is part of your limbic system, and it processes fearful events. So if a guy
Interesting.
walks into your house right now with a gun, your amygdala is literally going to process that event, and you're gonna go into fight or flight mode. You're either
Okay.
gonna attack the guy, or you're gonna jump out your window, right? And that was developed in primitive times, where man had to survive, and we had to face a saber-tooth tiger, or other deadly animals around us, right?
Hmm.
So that was how our brain developed that. But in the market, that's still not gone. When a lot of people come into the market, they think that, oh, it's just risking money, I can make good decisions. I've done it on my fake account or my demo account. I know how to do this. But when you put money on the line, you're constantly dealing, your brain is processing that information the same way a guy holding a gun to your
Hmm.
head, or like a saber-tooth tiger coming
Hmm.
at you from a distance. You're either going to fight, or you're going to flight. And the way to not let your amygdala get hijacked, it's by learning how to manage your breathing and just like easy psychological things. And these are things I've talked about, in some of my videos on YouTube, my psychology course on at Live Free Effects. These are all things that will help traders like just learn, because a large part of the industry right now is focused on, how to use this perfect strategy to make, the millions of dollars and blah, blah, blah. But
Uh-huh.
that's not really what it's going to take for a lot of people. A lot of people need to learn how to manage themselves, because a lot of people, a lot of traders who've been trading long enough are going to tell you, oh, if I could just follow my plan, I know I'll make a lot of
Yeah,
money.
yeah. It takes
But
discipline, right?
not, and discipline is words of, like that a lot of people are just gonna throw at you, but like discipline is a good word. Like if a trader tells me, it takes discipline, it doesn't take discipline. Discipline has nothing to do with this.
Hmm.
It's emotional management. It's
Hmm.
learning how to manage your emotions when someone pisses you off right now, and every ounce of you want to punch them in the face.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not going to take discipline for you to stop, because it's completely, discipline is going to the gym and working out, and getting out of bed, but when you're faced with a difficult situation where someone's holding a gun to your head or you're being attacked, discipline has nothing to do with it, right? It's how you're going to manage that state. It's fear management, right? That's really
Hmm.
what it is, managing that fear. Because what's going to happen is when you get in a high pressure situation, your heart rate is going to increase. You're going to be fidgety. You're going to want to move around often because it's uncomfortable. And
Hmm.
traders, when they are faced with, maybe they've taken a loss, they've taken multiple loss. How are you going to deal with that? Because those are the symptoms your body and mind you're going to be feeling. So learning to calm yourself down, relax. It's a very like easy thing to say, but it is extremely effective once you do it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So that's what
I
I
think
would
I
say
think
for
that technique there that takes discipline. I know what you're saying with like the
absolutely.
fear. You know what I mean? Because like even for me, sometimes like
Yeah,
just listening to what you're saying, I try to apply stuff like that to even for customers. Sometimes there's a customer and they say something, and I don't want to fucking rip their head off. I just want to like what I mean. I want to just like start screaming and yelling at them, but I'm like, okay, this is not going to be the best path forward if I start yelling and screaming or swearing at them, whatever it is. I'm not gonna. It's not gonna end in a beneficial outcome for either of us, right? Either
sure.
customer's gonna pay hardball. Well, screw you. I'm not paying you. People get vindictive, whatever. So I think it's similar. It sounds like for this, where like I'm curious for you now. Like, how do you know? Like, I know you were telling me before you wear like a heart rate monitor, like a smartwatch with like a heart rate monitor. So how do you know for you when you need to like? What are the signs that you know that you okay? I got to walk away. I'm getting too emotionally involved in this. I need to take a 20-30 minute break, whatever it is. I know you have a couple of videos that you talk about. I'm just curious, like some quick points of like how you know when you've reached that point.
So what I do actually is I over the years, with trial and error, you kind of figure out you, because that's the one thing about trading is, the goal is to figure out, how is to figure out your personality. It teaches you a lot a lot about yourself, and sometimes that's the difficult thing. Facing yourself is hard. So if you are going to be a trader, that's something that you have to be prepared to do. And over my trading career, I just put a couple things in plan that like I know works well for me. And one
Mm-hmm.
of those things is I call it the strike rule. So
Okay.
every single day I come to the market, I give myself three strikes. Three strikes. I have a 7:30 to 11 a.m. So I have about like a 3 to 4 hour window where I'm gonna be taking, my trades for the day. Right.
Okay.
And if I take the first trade, it doesn't go well. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I see, okay, wait to see what the market's doing. Did I get it wrong on the direction, or was I too early? Whatever it is. And what's my expectation for the day? Like, am I expecting, volatility in the market? Am I expecting the market to be moving well today? So days like Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, those are powerful powerhouse days where there's a lot of liquidity coming into the market. Whereas Monday and Friday, the market's usually either setting up on Monday or dying out on Friday. So the
Uh-huh.
conditions tend to be very choppy and not very decisive. So those days, I don't put too much on the table. So
Interesting.
if I come in on a Monday, for example, I could take a loss and just walk away because it's a Monday. I know I have the rest of the week.
Mm-hmm.
If I have, if I come in on Tuesday, I look, boom, place a trade, I lose, and I see, okay, there's still the opportunity. I'll take it. If I take it, like if I lose the trade, then I'll take another trade. So that's three strike. After that trade, if I lose that trade for the day, like that's it. Today is not my day.
Interesting.
Three
Okay.
strikes, boom. Like that's really not my day, and it fits in with my risk parameters.
Mm-hmm.
And some days it sucks because then you've taken your three strikes and you're watching the market go in your favor. But for me, I just know that if I can't cut myself off, there is absolutely no discipline. What's going to stop me the next day from taking 5 to 10 trades?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a risk parameter that I just put on myself. That way, I don't go into the concept of I got to make my money back. I need
Yeah.
to make my money back. So
Yeah.
learning over my journey, my years, is to be able to live with um just a loss. You take a losing trade, just lose, just it's just live with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Live with it, spend a day with it. And it's not pleasant trying to have a good day knowing that you just lost $1,000 for today or
Mm-hmm.
$500 for today. The pressure of coming to the market tomorrow is gonna affect you. And for years, every time I would lose a trade, instantly, bad day. Instantly, like not
Interesting.
necessarily instantly, every day closed my trade with like a loss. It was like it affected my mood so much because I didn't know how to control that emotion. So it was like a bad day because if I win, I'm happy. If I lose, I'm sad.
Mm-hmm.
So for like 3 years, until I started to develop a certain level of maturity, and because I didn't really like to let it dictate my life like that,
Mm-hmm.
I implement certain rules. So that's kind of what I'd say. I know it's a long stretch.
Interesting. No, I like it. I think, like I said, a lot of what you're saying for me, I think I can apply, and a lot of people can apply to their own life. Like for me, for business, I think even though we're in, like I said, different kind of businesses, there's a lot of the
Yeah.
psychology that I think can be applied. And like I said, for me, I know certain times that like, okay, I need to walk away from this customer, or I need to kind of cool off before I send a really heated email. And I think for me, I've known I always regret the decisions I make when I'm emotionally heated. I never regret the decisions I make when I take 20, 30, 40 minutes to just cool off, and then
Mm.
thoughtfully and tactfully create my response. I think it's always better. I think like it's interesting how we are as humans, even though we're very self-aware and we're very kind of philosophical. There's still certain parts of our brain that is very animalistic, and that like you said, fight or flight. When somebody does something bad to us, we want to like react in a certain way. And I think
Yeah.
it's I've always been what's the word I'm looking for? I guess more grateful to myself when I take that time as opposed to just jumping into it, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's interesting, man.
Absolutely.
What else did I want to ask you? I got a bunch of questions here. We were talking a bit before we hit record about highs and lows in the seasons in the market. So I was curious, is like you were telling me that there is a kind of like high seasons and low seasons, and I thought it was kind of just all year round. So I'm interested to hear more about like the slower times or the more profitable times for you in the markets, and kind of that kind of thing.
For sure. I the, the market is like for me, it's I see it as a marketplace. I see it as like transactions. Where a lot of businesses come to make transactions, but not just businesses, countries. And countries also operate as businesses. So it's very, very like very similar. So
Mm-hmm.
like right now we are in December. We're wrapping up the year, walking into 2023. And things right now, just given the way businesses are going to operate right now, a lot of businesses are winding down, are planning for the new year. They've already put in plans, to that's going to be taking place in the new year. So right now is very much like a downtime. There's you're still going to see movements in the market,
Okay.
but a lot of the guys, if you look at like Wall Street, for example, are spending time with your family. Probably till
Gotcha.
like mid-January or so. You're gonna start to see some like some pretty decent movement when the Christmas, New Year's are all behind us. Other than that, when summertime comes, the market conditions tend to be a little bit more choppier. So the winter months I like from like January to like June. You're likely gonna see like good movement. Like market's volatile, it's moving well. There's not a lot. It's straightforward in terms of its pullback. For me personally, this is just my opinion. Other traders might disagree. It's a lot easier to trade. Whereas summertime is, like people go on vacation, people are traveling. These Wall
Mm,
Street guys are in Hamptons, or like they're taking vacation out, somewhere with your family. So it's like there's not as much liquidity in the market. And when September rolls around, there's a lot more liquidity in the market because
interesting.
everyone's kind of like back to work, the kids are back to school. So like you can see these little details in the market if you've been in there long enough. So to me, it's probably no different than most businesses. It's just like in terms of expectation, a lot of businesses, pick up after the New Year's. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of money being spent, from like the economy standpoint. So guess what? The market picks up as well, right? Summertime here, or like it's everyone wants to have a good time, sit outside, have a beer. Work is not really the main focus, right?
Interesting.
So you're gonna feel that in the market as well. Not as much, like because people are still working, but it's not gonna be the same as like the winter months where okay, it's the new year, we're trying to achieve our goals, and we need to make some serious progress before summertime. So yeah, like that's what I'd say, from my standpoint. So generally, January till like the summertime, those are usually the best times, that I very much enjoy trading. I'd say before that, like October till like December. And once the December break is over and January break is over, January to the summertime is usually the best times to be in the market.
Interesting. And now, do you use certain like exchanges? Like, will you just do like I don't know much about different. I know there's the TSX and then the New York Stock Exchange. Do you strictly deal on TSX, or is it a little bit different with currency trading?
So the currency market, we have brokers. So the
Okay.
currency market, you're going to have brokers. I'm not too sure if there are any exchanges. Maybe it could be,
Hmm.
but we deal in brokers. And broker is an exchange and a broker. They sound very similar, but they are very different. A broker is more like a middleman that is, connecting. You to like that's connecting, that's in between buyers and sellers, right? Whereas an exchange is just connecting buyers and sellers, and they're not involved in any sort of like trading against you, which a broker will sometimes do. A broker will either place a trade against your client. So if you're coming in and they feel like, okay, this person is not a good trader, they're gonna take the opposite sides of your trade. Whereas an exchange doesn't do that. An exchange is just a place that provides you know like buyers and sellers, allows
Okay.
buyers and sellers to come together and give them enough liquidity for like pretty much where like someone can always take a trade because they're pairing a buyer and a seller together if needs be. So yeah,
Interesting.
that's so we do we it's mainly brokers.
Oh, interesting. And will you find for you, just I thought of something else now as you were talking, back to kind of like what you were talking about, like, the psychology of trading. And I know you mentioned before, like revenge trading and helping avoid that. Do you find too, you'll have like on the other side, like say you're having a really good day, do you set yourself a cutoff too? Where you're like, okay, I've already made over and above what I was hoping to make today, I kind of step away? Or do you have a certain dollar amount that you're going to play with, and if that's lost, you step away? Or you kind of, you base it more on and if you're having like 3 strikes and then you kind of walk away?
Yeah, so for me, it's I never like to give what's profit that I have made back. That's one. That's whether it's
Gotcha.
$50, whether it's $500, $1,000, 2 grand, whatever it is. I don't like to give it back
Mm-hmm.
because I know the market's also doesn't like to give it back either.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I have my 3 strike rule. But if I take a trade, and my I usually um, give myself multiple objectives. And this is something I started doing for my trading because I found it to be very helpful, because I had some really bad, made some bad mistakes when I first went full time, because of greed, right? Like, for example, I remember this because I had it journaled on my trade. I had a trade up that was running, like 39,000. I took the trade at like a day and a half ago,
Okay.
and the market had moved like so much, like it moved like insane.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just waiting for it to hit my objective, which was maybe like, would have put it to like 40 grand or something. And it was like I didn't take anything from it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't end up taking anything from it because I was waiting for the market to hit that objective, and the market didn't hit the objective. So I watched $40,000 turn into a $12,000 loss.
Wow. That's gotta hurt.
So it hurt a
Mm-hmm.
lot. It hurt a lot and changed, the because I just like, this is stupid. You
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't trade like this. This is not a way to trade. So now, where the way I trade is more so, um, I look at the market, and when I put my trade, I have areas where I am looking to get out, where I'm going to be scaling out.
Gotcha.
So let's say you have $100 on the trade, for example, which is going from 40,000 to $100.
Mm-hmm.
You have, just for explaining and what, because most people are starting. That is what makes sense to a lot of people who are starting. $100, you're like, maybe your objective is to make $100 from that trade.
Mm-hmm.
And as the market is moving in your favor, right, maybe gets to 50 or something, right, like whatever the market is already giving you, that is the guarantee. There is nothing else more guaranteed than
Mm-hmm.
what you're seeing. So for me, I just pair that like philosophy with like the technical aspect. For example, knowing where buyers are coming in and where sellers are coming in, and usually just use that to make my decision as to whether I'm going to be getting out of the trade, there. So I have like 3 levels where I just take my profit. So
Smart.
yeah, so that's usually what I do, like 3 times where I scale out to make sure I always take something out of the table, right? So that's usually how I do it. Yeah,
Because in a
yeah,
way, it's
pretty
kind of
much.
like the psychology. Imagine it's similar to, obviously it's not gambling because there's more skill involved, and it's not just like
Yeah.
you're spinning the wheel and hoping it lands on red. But it's, I imagine
Mhm.
it's similar in the psychology of gambling too, where like, I was never a big gambler. My father, used to
Yeah.
work for the Alcohol and Gaming Commission, so he always would kind of scare me away from gambling. For me, I'd rather put my money into something that I know is going to grow longer term, and that's more fun gambling to me, like an investment or whatever. But
Absolutely.
I know I've heard from people that have had addictions where it's like, you lose $100 and you want to make that back. And I guess that's probably similar to revenge trading, where it's like, oh, I got to make this back, got to make this back. And it's having enough grace to give yourself permission to kind of fail. Like sometimes, like, okay, you're not gonna have days where you're always making 50 grand profit or whatever. You're gonna have days where you're gonna lose. And I
No.
think it's more having, like you said, a long-term strategy, so that you know that, okay, I today was a bad day, that's okay, it's within the game plan for the next 2-3 years that I'm going to have some of these bad days, and always going back to that kind of plan, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's it. Like, that's the main thing. just you're not going to have a good day every day,
Yeah.
and a big part of once you make that realization, a big part of the job is showing up,
Hmm.
showing up if you're having and showing up not to make up for your losses. You're not trying to take a bigger risk showing up. It's you're showing up because things turn around, right? If you are doing the same thing over and over and over again in terms of your approach, like because a lot of traders, when things start to go sideways, they change their plan.
Mm.
They deviate from your plan and they stop doing the same thing, even if it had given them like 10 straight wins, but now they're experiencing, five straight losses. Oh,
Hmm.
this must not be working. So they
Hmm.
they end up changing your approach and doing something, completely different. And that kind of causes, people um to experience, further and further losses. So a big part of it is just showing up, doing the same thing every single day. And, like over a period of time, you're gonna see that, like, hey, like you are like things can change very dramatically.
Hmm.
That's the thing. So things can change very dramatically, but as long as you're following your plan, and you trust what you're following, that's pretty much all you do. You just show up and do the work.
It's interesting. I think I need to adopt that more too, especially for we were talking. I think it was last week when we were working together, but about like the social media game, and it's something for me. Like for
Mm,
my business, I want to grow. Like obviously, I'm doing the
yeah.
podcast. I like to grow that, but especially for the renovation business, I want to grow that. And I think for me,
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to kind of like back to the bamboo analogy you were saying, the tree. It's like I feel like, oh, you're posting, you're doing this stuff, you don't have any viewers, you don't have people looking at stuff, and it kind of sometimes gets demotivating. So I'm fine. I'm
Mm,
curious to know how you stay motivated, and I guess it's probably part of your game plan that okay, it's going to take a while to grow my subscriber base and viewers, but then maybe a couple years down the road, it's going to start to take off. So I find that's for me one thing I gotta kind of wrap my head around, because sometimes it's tough to stay motivated to keep posting and recording and all that stuff. So I'm curious how kind
for
of you deal
sure.
with that.
Funny enough, I got my buddy, a friend of mine coming by right now to we're gonna be going for to a coffee shop and just
Nice.
working on some content ideas. And for me, it's I consider myself extremely motivated and whatnot, but at the same time, you're not going to feel motivated every time, and especially when you're working towards a goal, and sometimes you feel like you have a better skill than other people who are blowing up or whatever,
Hmm.
whatever your reason is to wanting to start, a business. You want to give you to get out there more. It's not always motivating to put out a content and
Hmm.
one or two people view it, and like whatever, because I know what it's like because I'm on
Yeah.
YouTube now.
Hmm.
But for me, the biggest one of the biggest things is um understanding that things take time. And it's one of the lessons that I've learned, in the last year or so, is that when it comes to um, wealth or whatever, like to do it, it takes time. You have to be patient with yourself. So whatever you're doing, whatever idea you're starting, let's say you have this podcast right now, you want it to be, getting maybe like 1,000 to 5,000 or 10,000 or $100,000 listen within a certain period of time, you know, set it up and say, let's see where we're at in 5 years.
Hmm.
Let's see where we're at in maybe 3 years is
Yeah.
probably the minimum I'd say.
And that's the tough thing
But
too. I find even for me, like it's like most people, like I'll be honest, I feel like that too. It's like shit. Like I gotta do this for 3 years to really see results. But you know what? That's realistic, because even if you think about like relating it to the gym, I find going to the gym and working out and building your body has taught me so much about life. Like when you go start working out, if you're a slob and you haven't worked out ever in your life, don't expect to look like like Arnold Schwarzenegger in 2 months. It's gonna probably take you a
mm-mm,
year, if not more, to build an impressive body. And I think like that, I need to remind myself sometimes that social media is like that, a business is like that. It's gonna take time, like that bamboo tree. I'm gonna remember that story now because that's a really good a really good analogy. But it takes time for that to upfront work for you to grow, and then eventually you start to see the fruits of your labor, right?
For sure, for sure. And there are going to be many days where you don't feel like doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the one thing. It's like for me right now, it's like with life, you have a daughter, you have a kid. These are all things that like it takes an adjustment for you, to get to like, sometimes I look at myself, I'd say to myself, like, man, am I still the same, you know, guy who was crushing it like, at 23 or whatever. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
27, I got a daughter. And the answer is no, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not. I'm not the same guy who's risking everything, putting everything on the line to make a quick buck or whatever. Things change. You have to adapt. And what I do now is understand that, hey, you as an individual can get far, by yourself. But if you want to go further, you have to surround yourself with quality people,
Mm-hmm.
people who actually are not necessarily they think like you, or because as human beings, we like to surround ourselves with the same people, with people who have, similar opinions, similar jobs, similar bank account. And to me, that's like, you don't need there's no growth in that, because all you guys are exactly the same. You're not learning anything from one another.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, when you have a goal, surround yourself with people who can actually help you attain that goal, who can help you achieve that goal.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's one of the things I've done is like whatever I do when I first started getting serious about trading, I was partying. I was throwing parties a lot, like I was living on my own, 18 years old, 19 years old. A lot of college kids didn't have that opportunity because maybe they lived at home.
Mm-hmm.
And like you lived on campus, so then you had some contact with some beautiful people, so it
Mm-hmm.
was it was always a good time.
Yeah.
But I realized, hey, like that lifestyle is cool, but like, am I gonna be doing this? All like I was partying like Thursday to Sunday.
Yeah.
It's fun, but like I need to do something more with my life now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I need to do something more in my life. And all the people I thought were my friends, like, hey man, I'm doing this business. Let's grind. Even some of my like really close friends, where it's like you'd see me and you'd see them. It's like when I started trying to like go for more to get out of like my freaking $500 apartment, that
Mm-hmm.
like let's do something more. They weren't with it. Until
Yeah.
this day, they still live at home with your parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you think about 5 years and what you are looking to accomplish, the one thing you have to understand is the time will pass regardless.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. So we as human beings, we like to underestimate, overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year and underestimate what we can do in 5 to 10 year period. You
Yeah.
can be the
Absolutely.
best in the podcast game, within the next 5 to 10 years. That's
Absolutely. And for me,
that's it.
honestly, I enjoy it. Like for me, I love talking to part of the reason I started this with my buddy Prash. He's an Indian guy I went to high school with. He kind of stepped back a little bit from the podcast because he's got family stuff going on. He's got work stuff going on. So I kind of, picked it up. But I just love part of the for me, the theme of the podcast. I just love talking to other Canadians, people who have moved here, immigrated here, similar to my family, built something for themselves. For me, it's just like, it's so motivating because I think we're such a lucky country. Yeah, the States is similar, but we're different in a lot of ways too. And I think the fact that we all have a little bit different cultural backgrounds is what makes us proud to be Canadian. And for me, I just love
Yeah.
talking to other people that have been through that because for me, like I said, I'm very lucky. I was born here. I can't imagine, kind of doing what you did, doing what my grandparents did, like a lot of people's parents and grandparents did, where you get on a boat or a plane and you move to a different country to start over. Like for me, that just motivates me. And part of the reason why I think why I'm so motivated to just kind of do something for myself and give my family independence is because I feel like my grandparents struggled so that my parents could have a little
Hmm.
bit easier life. So that I could have a little bit easier life. And for me, it puts a fire under my ass to get up in the morning and do the best I can because I feel like, they put me in that position to kind of succeed.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure, and you're gonna do it. You're gonna do it, dude. Like you have the drive and you have the ambition, and for me, it's nice to know at your age, because it's like right now, 27, like you're in your 30s. So it's like the a lot of people die at 25,
Hmm.
not physically, but from like an emotional,
They just like
and
give
from a
up, right?
heart
They give
level.
up.
They give up.
Yeah.
They give up. So, you still having that, your drive, your spirit, looking to take control of your life and, be the commander of your destiny is extremely motivating. Is
Hmm.
extremely motivating. And I think there's a reward for that. And you just have to continue to go, continue to not let the comforts of life, which is something that I constantly have to remind myself, is so because sometimes it's better to work from a sink or swim position when you want to achieve something, your goals or your dreams,
Hmm.
because it really forces you um, to make things happen.
Yeah.
And one of the things about like human beings is when you get in that position, most of you will realize like, hey, there's a lot more power that you have within yourself to actually accomplish that which you are seeking. But the reality is like you don't want to live in survival mode for 5, 10 years while you're trying to get to that, like lifestyle or life that you want, because life is still happening right now. You still have responsibilities, still have things that you got to do.
Yeah.
So, my thing is just like always keep going. Never let the comforts of maybe a paycheck, maybe a good job, like to get you. Sometimes it could be even making a lot of money,
Hmm.
but just not how you want to make the money.
Yeah.
Like don't let that stop you. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much all I'd say.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty. I got like maybe like 10 more minutes because
Yeah,
my
no
buddy
problem.
is
We'll
really
wrap it
about
up
to.
because I usually try to
Yeah,
keep the podcast to an hour anyway, so this is perfect. So
yeah.
yeah, so one of the other things I wanted to get your feedback on too is because you have a little bit more knowledge of the space than I do, is the whole kind of FTX scandal that took place. Like for me, I'm being a advocate of crypto and I love crypto. It's embarrassing, and I think it was embarrassing for a lot of people in that space because it kind of sets the industry back. I think a while now, and it just it's similar to like people saying, "Oh, see, crypto now is like a scam," blah blah blah. But I see it as kind of like like you just because, for example, you had I'm trying to think. Oh, Enron, for example. Enron was a shady company that screwed over a lot of
Mhm.
people. Bernie Madoff was running a shady operation. Doesn't mean the whole stock market's shady. I mean, you have a couple bad characters,
Mhm.
unfortunately, that ruin it and puts a bad taste in people's mouth. And we'll recover. It'll take time. But I'm just curious, like your feedback on that situation. Do you think he's going to go to jail? Do you think he's going to get proper kind of fines or whatever? Because he seems to be a pretty powerful guy. Like his parents are like politicians, and it's weird the way that the media seems to be covering it. It seems like they're not going too hard on him. So I'm curious how you
No,
think it's going to play out.
I mean, I'd be surprised if they do go really hard on him, because the reality is like a lot of people say that the whole FTX thing, that's the like nobody saw this coming, nobody saw this coming. Oh my God, nobody saw this coming.
Mhm.
And personally for me, I don't believe that. I don't believe that because it's I think to some degree that is the standard in the industry. What he did was not was not a new thing.
Mhm.
It wasn't new, and it's not new at all. He just over leveraged himself aggressively.
Mhm.
But when you come into the concept of like, because a lot of people are like, oh my God, like the money that like clients' money that were deposited into the account, were being used for other investments, and for his other company because he owned another company as well, and like that to me is the standard in the industry. Like a lot of other firms are doing that. A lot of other exchange are doing that. Maybe not as big as him. And when I talked about the brokerage, for example, a broker versus an exchange, whereas a broker is a middleman, where an exchange just kind of like pairs you up with a buyer and seller. I'm brokers also, I'm sure legally, maybe they're not supposed to take client money out of your account to make investments, but a lot of these brokers are set up in like Belize, Cayman Islands.
Like
You
you get
don't
away with
think
that
that
shit. Yeah.
they get away, and a
Yeah.
lot of them are like the ones who are set up here in New York. They're a lot more regulated, and sometimes they could even have a house, here, but their setup is your operation is governed by like a Cayman Islands or whatever. So it just means that like so sometimes if they are here, they may not be able to give you like a lot of leverage or whatever, but a lot of brokers are making investments with your money. When you put your money into a brokerage account, that money that you put into that account is not like
It's
it's
not just
paper
sitting
money.
there.
They
Yeah. Yeah.
it's sitting there. It's
Yeah.
paid. They credited your account with paper money. The money that you sent them has gone into your bank account.
Yeah.
That's your business bank account. That's where the money is. Your money is not in your trading account. Now, if you make enough money to request, a trade like your to request that you have your investment back or to withdraw, then you can start to look at, okay, they'll credit your account or they'll send you the money from the bank account. But like, are you going to be monitoring what they're doing with all the clients' money? So to me, it's like what he did wasn't new. He was just one of the biggest exchange and had one of the biggest credibility in the business. If a smaller exchange or a smaller broker, which brokers, like people who set up brokerage, they've been caught for doing that before.
Okay.
And I know some people, personally, who've made that mistake in my industry, and they quickly realized like, hey, it wasn't it was like people's money. They were like literally crediting your account with like fake money. So a lot of brokers do that, but no one's really been caught. So a lot of people saying that like, oh, nobody saw it coming, nobody saw it coming. That's because it's the standard. You just don't want to get caught. Like nobody just wanted to get caught. So I personally don't feel like they're going to be making an example out of him, especially with him saying publicly like how much money he has in his bank account, which is bullshit. Excuse my language, but I think that personally he has, a lot of, money set aside. Like if you are going to be making risk like that, you're probably going to have money set aside. But
Of course.
in terms of how hard they're going to be going at him, I personally don't know, but I know he's not going to be coming out of this broke.
I think
That's
you're right.
just my
I think you're right.
personal.
Like you even look at the people like from the 2008, like I don't know much about it, but from even, what the whole Big Short movie was about, the 2008 financial crisis where the banks got bailed out, those CEOs still fucking walked away with, hundreds of millions of dollars. So yeah, the companies went bankrupt, but they were okay. And I think it just makes me angry. And I think, unfortunately, I want to believe it. Yeah, this is the last time something like this could happen, but you know what? It's not. It's going to be, you had this with Bernie Madoff, you had this with Enron, you had this with the 2008, the banks getting bailed out and over leveraging, mortgage-backed securities and stuff like that. And I think for me, what I take from this situation is that, protect your money. As the small guys always get screwed, like the individual investors, the retail investors. So just
Yeah.
protect your money, take your profits off the table sometimes. And especially with crypto, the number one rule is like, don't keep your money on the exchange, because there's been so many exchanges over the past decade that have gone bankrupt. Because there was one Quadriga, it was a Canadian exchange. There was one called Mt. Gox in Japan that went bankrupt. So it's like, part of it's like, yeah, of course what this guy did was wrong, but it's like, guys, people gotta be smart and use their head. Because this is probably going to continue to happen. The one silver lining, I think, is that hopefully this causes for a little bit more government regulation, which will be good, because crypto is like, even though it's been around like a decade now, people are still a bit skeptical of it. It's like, okay, is it real? Whatever. But I think now, hopefully, with government getting more and more involved, and big companies like Tesla buying crypto, and there's a guy, Michael Saylor, he runs a company called MicroStrategy. He's invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in Bitcoin. So I think as more the masses get involved and these big companies get involved in crypto, it's going to help regulate it even more and more. But it's similar to the early days of like the internet. I remember when the internet kind of came out, and you have all these companies that came up overnight, like, pets.com, for example, and then they went bankrupt within like 6 months. It doesn't mean the internet's bad. It means there's a couple bad players that don't know what they're doing or trying to
Bad
scare people.
apples.
Exactly. Right. And I think that's how people need to look at it. I personally, when I first got involved in crypto, was probably 6 years ago. It was a buddy of mine. I'm actually going to have him on the podcast. He's a really smart guy. He kind of got me involved in it. And now seeing it like being 10 plus years and crypto's still around, that for me strengthens it. Means like, okay, this thing's probably not going anywhere. It's probably here to stay, which means it's probably just going to get more regulated. And when the government just finds a way to make some money off of it, similar to like booze or weed or whatever, that's when you start to see it explode. So I'm hoping that, in the long run, this is a good thing that people see. Okay, this is kind of like a hammer. You can use a hammer to build a house. You can use a hammer to smash somebody's head in. It doesn't mean the hammer is wrong. It means it's the person, how they use the hammer, right? So, we'll see, man. We'll see. But
Absolutely.
yeah, man, I think that's pretty good. We recorded for an hour and a half. Thank you so much, dude, for being on. I really appreciate it. There was lots of good information. And one last time for everybody, I'm going to put in the show notes, but maybe just put your link to your site there. If anybody's interested in getting started with trading or learning, they can give you a visit.
Yeah, for sure. You can find me first on YouTube. It's Live Free FX. So it's LIVE and then Free FX. So Live Free FX. We're a trading and psychology brand, but just also like I share a lot of like personal development stuff there too. Just things to like help. Especially, if you're between the age, of 20 to 30, something you can relate with. If you are older, 30 to 40, there's still lots of things for you to take out as well. So like there's a lot of stuff, and especially as we're going into the new years, I'm going to be ramping up on the content that we deliver, and most importantly the quality of the content that we put out. For sure, absolutely. If you're interested in starting out in terms of your trading courses, we have trading courses on our platform, livefreefx.com, which you can put on your smartphone or on your laptop, check it out, see how that will impact you. We're giving out a free trading course or starter course called Forex 101 that will give you a little bit of the starting knowledge of like the trading market, how what is it, and all the things to kind of if you're going into a new industry, you need to at least know the origins and all the things that like how it came about, but how to get started, those information like that. So we cover that in that, and I have other like advanced courses as well, but those are all paid. So depending on where you are in your journey, there's something for everybody. So definitely you can feel free to check it out. And
Awesome. Well, brother, thank you again, man. Really appreciate it. We'll definitely get you back on again in the near future. But thank you everybody for listening, and we will catch you. We're going to try to do another recording soon, but I'm not exactly sure. But we'll figure it out. But anyways, man, have a great New Year's. Thank you again for being part of the podcast, and we'll talk soon, dude.
Awesome. Have a good one, Mike. Rob. Have a good one, Rob. Thank you for having me.
Of course, man. Okay, talk soon. Ciao.